WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM's Master of Business Administration is designed to accommodate the career needs of professionals across a variety of work organizations. More information at business.udmercy.edu.
It's The Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Nick Austin. Today on the program, Detroit is developing a new sports dome in Chandler Park. We'll hear from Detroit City Council member Letitia Johnson about the project.
But first, on The Metro, it wasn't that long ago that Michigan voted to allow the legal sale of marijuana. One of the obvious appeals to this decision was money. Michigan City's marijuana tax dollars would beef budgets and allow more spending on local projects. Well, according to the Michigan Department of Treasury, counties and cities are now expected to receive $87 million in payouts from taxes on marijuana purchases. Ferndale, specifically, is expected to receive over $350,000 from sales in 2023, a 37% increase from 2022 numbers. To talk about the significance of this revenue, we have Ferndale City Manager Joseph Gacioch. Thank you for joining the show, Joseph.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
All right. So how big of a deal was this revenue for the city of Ferndale?
Well, annually it's become a greater deal, especially following the pandemic, where cities have really had to, address kind of the consequences of the pandemic financially. So for us, $354,000, it's significant, and it's all applied to the general fund.
Yeah, so were you surprised at all the amount of money that was coming down, especially like you said, it was such a huge increase, $350,000. What was going through your mind, especially throughout the city government? Yeah,
I got to say we're thrilled that it's going in that direction on the revenue side of things. But it's about, I think, $50,000 more than we expected initially this time last year. So that's really good news for us. And it's coming in a year where we're seeing costs for all of our projects come in, 10 to 20% higher than they were budgeted for last year. One example I can give you, recently we City Council just approved a park project at Wilson Park. We're going to be doing a major redevelopment there. Well, the cost of that came in, close to $100,000 over what we had originally budgeted for.
Mm. So this money will help to cover the costs of this new remodeling.
This revenue helps us cover those costs. We apply it to help our public safety, our public works, and all of our important general fund services.
All righty then. So, when we think about what's going on right now, I'm bringing in Nick Austin because he wants to talk a little bit more about what's going on with the revenues.
Yeah, well, I just want to jump in here also, and thanks for joining us, Joe. But when, there was also some criticism from residents, of course, about having all of these marijuana stores in the city. Meanwhile, we're discussing this revenue for you. Does that prove that it was worth it, or are there still issues that you need to work out with residents who have that criticism, maybe say the juice wasn't worth the squeeze?
Well, in Ferndale, I can't speak for other communities, but in Ferndale, our electorate predominantly was in favor of the state referendum a few years back. So I think generally, you're never going to get 100% consensus in a population, but I think generally there's substantial more in favor in Ferndale than opposed. And I really haven't heard directly, at least my office hasn't heard a lot of concerns from residents about our operated businesses in Ferndale.
Right. Well, that's a good sign there. Another concern I think about with things that go into the general fund is, for example, if you start getting extra revenues from something, there might be a tendency to start relying on that revenue. And then what does that do to oversight of the industry if you start becoming a little bit more reliant on marijuana sales as a way of getting some income? So is there any fail-safes or things that you have? What would you say to people who might be concerned that Ferndale becomes too reliant on this revenue?
Well, I think that's a really good point. In local governments, our finances, we operate under significant state tax law constraints that really restrict our abilities to raise revenue. So when you have the cost of goods and the cost of services changing as much as they have over the past 2 years, truth be told, we are coming to rely on this revenue. So for us, we just have to be really diligent in our annual budget process review. We make sure that, we have an ample rainy day fund or cash reserves, and we're as prepared as possible. But, we tend to budget more conservatively than progressively. And as I said, talking back to the beginning of the interview, these revenues came in substantially higher than we budgeted for. So we assume pretty conservative estimates around these things, and we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, it takes that discipline when you're looking at your own budgeting process. And that leads into another question that I have, because not all cities in and around Southeast Michigan or throughout Michigan have been so adoptive of allowing recreational sales in their towns. But after seeing these numbers, they might be thinking about it. So to other cities still exploring whether to allow the sale of marijuana in their respective area, what would you tell them, Joe?
Honestly, again, you gotta know where your community's at, and we, our community came out strongly in support. I think close to 85% voted in favor in Ferndale. So, you got to go with your community. If your community is against it, then we're in the industry of service, right? So, at the end of the day, the policy's got to kind of align with your community's vision and your community's pulse.
Ferndale City Manager Joseph Gacioch, thanks so much for joining us on the Metro this afternoon. We're definitely going to continue this conversation with you in the future.
All right, of course. Thanks. Take care.
Take care.
It's the Metro on 101.9 WDET, and coming up, we'll continue our look at marijuana in Southeast Michigan, specifically about how cannabis gets tested with Outlier media reporter Koby Levin.
Welcome back to the Metro. Coming up, we'll continue a conversation surrounding the state of marijuana sales in Michigan. Taking a quick weather forecast, you might want to layer up today. It's going to be cloudy with a high around 48 degrees. Expect wind gusts up to 21 miles per hour. Tomorrow we'll see the sun again, and it's going to be around 50 degrees. And Friday, mostly cloudy with a chance of rain in the afternoon. Expect a high around 57 degrees. And like I just said, Nick, we're continuing the conversation surrounding marijuana sales in the state of Michigan.
That's right, Tia. As we just heard in the beginning of the show, the business of marijuana sales is booming in Southeast Michigan, creating a significant stream of revenue for local governments. Yet as municipalities celebrate this financial windfall, the importance of strict industry oversight grows within the market. To shed light on this topic, Outlier Media's Koby Levin explored cannabis safety and testing in Michigan. In a recent article, he reviewed the state's regulatory framework, ongoing debates about the accuracy of product labeling, and the implications of state oversight as the industry continues to expand. To learn more about his findings and discuss what it means for consumers and the industry at large, we're joined by Koby Levin. Koby, thanks for joining us on the Metro.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here too, because I don't understand any of this stuff. So I want you to walk me through it. How is marijuana and cannabis tested in Michigan? And can you let us know what the process is like and how it compares to other places?
I can totally understand you're feeling overwhelmed. I walked into a weed lab, like a laboratory, and there must be 30 people. This is a spot in Hazel Park. This one's called Steadfast Labs, maybe 24 of these across the state. There's machines everywhere. There's people everywhere. They're running around with pretty substantial bags of cannabis, moving them through just like a bunch of incredibly technical equipment. And it took me a hot second to figure out what all was going on. The bottom line here is that any cannabis that you consume from a recreational store has been tested for a whole range of stuff. That stuff is designed to keep you safe and also to make sure that what's on the label, the potency, the description of the product is accurate. It's actually a pretty impressive system. I had some people say, Michigan's doing a pretty good job here. They've learned a lot from other states that are legalizing, but there are some serious growing pains.
Yeah. And you did mention in your article some are concerned about the process. What are their concerns?
So the thing that you hear over and over again is this phrase, potency inflation. Folks, when they go to the store, tend to want strong weed. folks in the industry have been able to sell weed for more and more money as long as they can get that THC level up. And the question is, how do you make sure that if a container says, oh, this is 25% THC, which is a lot, by the way, and much more than it would have been in the 90s or something, how do you make sure that that's accurate? And different labs use different methods. They all swear by their methods. But the bottom line is, anytime that we've seen independent evidence, it's tended to show that those labels are still inflated. So in Colorado, for example, they sampled a bunch of stuff from stores across the state, and they found that 75% of those samples were inflated by 15% or more.
Oh, man.
Okay, so that's really substantial, and it means that, you might not be getting quite as high as you think.
It is, especially if everybody's able to use their own testing policy with no throughput or no through line with the consistency between them all. Does having a more potent set of marijuana or cannabis, does that even get you more high, or does it work? Is it a 1-to-1 ratio?
It probably will have a stronger effect in some way, but people said to me over and over again, consumers in Michigan are a little bit on the wrong track here because weed is kind of complex. There's a lot going on inside of the product. There's chemical substances called terpenes. There's a variety of different kinds of THC and CBD, right? And all of that is going to affect how you actually feel.
Yeah.
The THC level alone tells you something, but it doesn't tell you everything that you need to know about the quality of your high. That hasn't stopped retailers from engaging in what is frankly a fight straight to the top.
Yeah.
The highest levels of THC possible.
Yeah, which would come back to oversight here. Before we get into what the state's doing to follow up on it, do you have any examples that you found through your reporting about complications with consistent testing or labeling that are examples of this out in the wild?
Sure. So there have been some really significant controversies. I mean, it has been a battle in the regulatory front. Yeah. There was a substantial recall of products put out by a particular lab over the last couple of years. That was partially reversed. And in fact, the concern there was mold, which is one of the things that they're testing for. And quite a few of these samples that were recalled wound up going back on the market, even after having tested positive for mold. Right. So there's an issue there, and there's just this battle playing out over who really gets final say over how testing happens and how the process is controlled. Yeah.
Governor Whitmer's recent budget proposal included an extra $3.4 million for what she said for the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. Do we have any idea what the governor's office believes they could do with this extra money for regulation and enforcement?
Sure, so they're just going to hire people. I think part of the issue is that they felt undergunned, right? Yeah. There have been numerous legal battles. This question, fundamental questions about who is ultimately in charge for deciding how weed gets tested, what we do to make sure that this product is safe, that what's on the label is what's inside. And frankly, they've been losing. They haven't been able to get some of these labs to fall in line with the kind of testing that they want, right? And so they're going to hire more people. They say that means more enforcement. And actually, some of that money is going to go to Attorney General Nestle's office, right, to actually strengthen the legal team.
Yeah.
And I just want to jump in here really quickly. I love the conversation right now between you and Nick, but I just want to know about the labs themselves. Just hearing about the oversight or lack of oversight, the labs that exist right now, is there any type of knowledge or anyone know about who's doing what and where these things are coming from?
Totally. So when you buy a product at the store, there's a little label on there. Yeah. That means that it's gone through a testing process, and the name of the lab will be on there, okay? That's actually a lot of information for you because you can look up on the web, if that lab has gotten into trouble, if there have been any violations. You can go to the lab's website. These are private businesses, right? But they want to convince consumers that they've got the highest quality testing available, right? This is where you do run into a little bit of trouble because it's kind of hard to sort through their arguments, right? Just a normal person going to the dispensary, they don't really want to differentiate, which test is the best, which is the most accurate. And so that's where the state comes in. One of the things that they're planning to do is create a reference lab in Lansing. So this is a state-run lab, same kind of facility as you have, maybe 24 of these things around the state that are doing all the required testing for recreational weed. This state lab, though, will test the testers, okay? So they're going to double-check the work of these private labs, And the thought is that maybe that'll lead to a little bit more consistency and increase folks' confidence that what they're getting is in fact what they think they're getting.
So for consumers who are listening right now and maybe not feeling so confident, do you have any recommendations for them and what they should do?
You know, I ask this question a lot because it seems overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah.
You look at these the labels, you go into a dispensary, and they'll tell you about 600 different things. You know, this one's going to make you feel kind of floaty. This one's going to help you study. And it's just like, how do you know that, right? How do you know that, right? And in fact, it's not an exact science, especially when you get into the exact effects of weed. These things affect different people differently.
Yeah.
The best advice that I heard talking to experts, folks who work in the lab industry, is to pick a product that you have tried and just go back to it, right? It is really hard to know that if you're swapping between labs, swapping between products, that you're going to get the same thing every time. Like, let's just be honest. These things affect us in different ways. Two things that say that they're going to make you, just the right amount of sleepy, but not too much. Like, come on, we don't know about that, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, it's not clear. But if you get the testing is good enough, this person says to me, that if you get the same thing every time, if you get something that you like, that's a way that you can at least be confident each time you go that, like, you know what you're getting.
Yeah. I heard the song "Your Body Is a Wonderland." Your body is a testing lab.
You did not pull out John Mayer this morning.
Deep cuts.
I wasn't ready for that. I was not ready for that.
Me neither.
One more question for you, Koby. For any consumers out there who are a little concerned or feel like their product has been properly tested or want to maybe knock it up the chain, think there's something issue going on with their product, what recommendations would you have for them?
Absolutely. So you can submit a complaint if you have a concern about your product. The Cannabis Regulatory Agency is the state agency that deals with these things. They have a website. You can email them. You can call them. And with this extra money for enforcement, I guess there's an even better chance this year that your complaint will be addressed quickly.
Koby Levin, reporter with Outlier Media, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank y'all for having me.
It's the Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin.
And I am Tia Graham. Thanks for joining us this morning. Just a quick news hit. The city has extended its deadline for the Keep Detroit Clean poster contest. K-12 students who live in Detroit, regardless of what school they attend, can enter. Posters are to be used when the NFL draft comes to the city of Detroit in April. The contest themes are Keep Detroit Clean, Don't Litter, and I Am Keeping My City Clean. Submissions will be divided into 3 levels, K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12, with 3 winners and honorable mention winners as well. For more information and details, you can head to keepdetroitclean.org. Those submissions are due March 18th. So go ahead and keep Detroit clean, kids. Make sure that you are seeing clean, litter-free streets.
Yeah, keep Detroit clean. I like that theme.
I do too.
I like a clean Detroit.
I do too.
I like a clean radio show.
I love a clean radio show.
I like a clean race for president, and I guess maybe it's getting a little bit more empty right now. We've learned, as despite winning the Vermont primary, South Carolina Republican candidate Nikki Haley has announced she's suspending her presidential campaign. NPR's Steve Inskeep spoke with reporter Don Gagne about why her campaign has ended.
So what do you make of this development?
It was going in the wrong direction for Nikki Haley. She said after Michigan, which was let's do the math.
It feels like weeks ago, but it was a few days back. Yeah,
exactly. That she was in through Super Tuesday. And here we are. NPR has confirmed, our colleague Sarah McCammon has confirmed from sources that this is the end of the line. And the map yesterday is really telling, right? In places like Iowa early on, Michigan, New Hampshire, she was in the high 30s, even in the 40% range in some cases. The map yesterday, with the exception of Vermont, which she carried with 49% 49%. There was a lot of, 17% against Donald Trump, 19%, 15% in Oklahoma. Virginia and Utah were kind of the high watermark, other than Vermont, in the 30s, cracking 40, barely there. But it was just clear to her that this was the end of the line. So we'll get this announcement today, and it still raises a lot of questions.
Yeah, let's talk about one of the questions. We've been able to confirm, as the Wall Street Journal first reported, that Haley is not going to endorse Donald Trump. She is going to, in some fashion, this is the way the Wall Street Journal phrased it anyway, that she is going to, in some fashion, call upon Trump to earn the votes of Republican voters. Now, it's clear that he's got the votes of the majority of Republican voters, but there is that slice of people who have said in interviews and in exit polls that they were for Haley, at least in part because they had serious concerns about Donald Trump as a presidential candidate once again.
I have been talking to a lot of those very voters at Haley events from Iowa and right on through, and they tend to fall into three groups. And at least according to my unscientific conversations, talking to 10 people here, 15 people here, 6 people there, they break down about a third, and 1/3 tells me that they're going to look third party, or maybe they'll just leave the top of the ballot blank and vote down ballot. So that was common. Just as common were people who would say to me, "Oh, push comes to shove, I have to vote for Trump," because there would be no other choice at that point, and I am a loyal Republican. But again, there was also a group that said they would vote for Biden. So we'll see when push comes to shove where these people actually go.
And there is going to be a lot, I think we can expect this fall, of candidates on both sides or surrogates on both sides, essentially saying, you may not like our guy, but the other guy is so terrible, you just gotta. That's going to be the Republican appeal, and honestly, in some cases, the Democratic appeal, isn't it?
Exactly. And that's what I've been hearing all along, and we'll see if that changes at all. It's also a question of turnout, whether or not they are enthused enough to vote at all.
That was NPR's Steve Inskeep speaking with reporter Don Gagne. Republican Nikki Haley says she does not plan to endorse Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump. This is The Metro. And it is The Metro on 1019 WDET. I'm Nick Austin alongside Tia Graham. And the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid process, has run into major delays.
That is right, Nick. Back in 2020, Congress passed the FAFSA Simplification Act. Its main goal was to make it easier for more families to get loans or access to funds for college, now known as Better FAFSA. These improvements have unfortunately caused some delays. Typically, the loan application process does take a few months, but there's been a few technical glitches, and the traditional May 1st deadline still stands, but it may be extended out a little bit further for some universities and students. To fill us in on what's happening with FAFSA, the process, and everything else is Erica Matthews-Jackson. She's the Director of Admissions at Wayne State University. Erica, thank you so much for joining us on The Metro.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. So I just want to start off with a clip from FAFSA Education Secretary talking about what's happening right now.
Mr. Secretary, in moving up this announcement of the student loan debt forgiveness, some people will naturally wonder if your attention is on the right problem right now, because you're in the middle of serious delays with FAFSA, the standard college financial aid form. Many people are going to get close to their college acceptance dates before they hear back from the federal government about financial aid. Are you on top of that problem?
We absolutely are. Since day one, we've been fighting, whether it's fixing public service loan forgiveness, doing the income-driven repayment adjustments. And with regard to FAFSA, yes, we're working aggressively there. And we recognize that there are delays, and we're working daily around the clock to make sure that we get the information as quickly as possible. We're moving in the right direction. Change is hard, We're focused on it. And as a parent of a high school senior myself, I recognize that delays are challenging. But at the end of the day, what we're delivering is going to be better for the American people.
Have you guys filled out the FAFSA?
Yes.
How's it going? Did you hear back?
My daughter looks at me and say, "Hey, Pa, when am I going to hear back?" Look, another issue. I have a sophomore in college. When he did the FAFSA 2-3 years ago, it was a long, tedious process. I remember how frustrating it was. For my other child, my youngest, 15 minutes. That alone is going to make it much more accessible.
So right now, Erica, what is holding up the process, slowing federal information getting into the universities?
Well, a lot of it are technical difficulties, but there also is a new calculation that's being done to determine what students are going to be eligible for what types of aid. And so that really has been the main thing that has made it difficult for schools to get the information that students are submitting on the FAFSA, because that calculation has changed. And so that is what's holding it up right now, which means that schools haven't even gotten any information from any student who has submitted a FAFSA. And typically in the past, the FAFSA becomes available on October 1. And schools like Wayne State are able to provide financial aid award letters to families by the end of December, so that they can then use that time from January till May 1, which is decision day, to figure out whether they're going to be able to afford to go to their top choice college or if they need to make adjustments. And right now, there's no information that's been provided to families, so they can't make any decisions.
And, it's important to note that you have to submit that application yearly, number one. So you have to do that every single year, especially if you're looking to get federal aid or any type of financial aid whatsoever. You have to do that every single year. So not only is this impacting students who are first-time students going into school for the first time, high school seniors becoming college freshmen, but you also have the sophomores and the seniors and the juniors and even beyond who are still using this process. So, what does this look like right now for students and families who are trying to get into school?
Yeah, so right now, nationally and in Michigan, FAFSA filing is down over 50%. So that means that a lot of families, and particularly at Wayne State, we serve a lot of families who are first-generation Pell-eligible students who really do need the support from federal financial aid as well as scholarships and state aid to be able to afford to go to college. And right now, they don't have any of that information to know whether or not they're going to get the aid that they're either expecting or had previously received if they're a current student. But I want people to remain hopeful and let you know that even though this process is challenging right now, it really is worth doing and worth submitting that FAFSA, because not only are there federal dollars available, but in Michigan, we now have the Michigan Achievement Scholarship, which was launched last year. So students who are attending a public university can get up to $5,500 a year to go to a public university in the state of Michigan, and they have to complete the FAFSA in order to be eligible for that, but also to be eligible for the federal aid and aid at the school that they plan to attend. So like the previous message said, that May 1 is decision day, and typically students would be making that decision on where to commit right now. So still try to make an informed decision, but you really are going to need that information in order to make the best decision for your family.
So, we talked a little bit earlier, but the Department of Education did announce at the beginning of February it was going to allocate $50 million in federal funding to nonprofit groups to help with financial support and help with getting some of this information processed in a timely fashion so that kids and parents and families can move forward with this process. So, what is Wayne State doing right now, if they're working with this or if they're not? What are you guys doing right now in order to help?
Yes, so we definitely have dedicated financial aid counselors who are available. We have FAFSA workshops. We have our next live workshop on March 19th at 4:30 p.m. But you can also go to the financial aid website at Wayne State, and there are FAFSA workshops and FAFSA Fridays. There are also community-based organizations like the Detroit College Access Network that are putting on FAFSA cafes. That is another resource that will literally sit down with a family and help them complete the FAFSA.
Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking about everything you said and saying, and I'm thinking about my own time. At this point, 10 years ago, but just applying and getting through so many different things and doing this for the first time. A lot of us were doing it for the first time alone, and just trying to handle all the pressures of getting this aid application done. What does this mean for some families, like we talked about a little bit earlier, who will not make it into school or return back to school without this application?
Yeah, it is. I don't want to minimize it. It is a dire situation. It really is. And we know, and I think that's why most universities, and particularly Wayne State, have the dedicated resources and support. So I want people to know that there is help available, and it is, challenging to try to navigate this on your own. One of the things that has come from this Better FAFSA process is that the FAFSA went from being to over 100 questions to now about 20 questions. So it will be easier to complete once you're able to actually complete it and submit it. But right now, there's a lot of kinks that need to be ironed out. And so I'm hopeful that that process will, the issues that people are having will be alleviated so that you can submit it, because that really is the most important thing to do.
I mean, I just ringing in my head, 50% decrease in applications that are being or just seen coming in through the door. So that's like a huge dip. That's a lot of students and families who possibly will not return to the process of going to school. So my last question to you, or my last takeaway from you, is what would you want families, once again, and people out there listening who are applying for school or maybe getting into just the idea of going back to school, whatever it may be, what would you tell them about the process?
I would tell them that the only way to get the money that you are eligible for is to complete this process. So last year, more than 50% of our incoming students at Wayne State were able to attend tuition free because of completing the FAFSA. So although it's a tedious process, although it's a challenging process, this really is a way to help you afford to go to college and to remove what we know is one of the number one barriers, which is college access and affordability.
Erica Matthews-Jackson is the Director of Admissions at Wayne State University. Thank you so much for joining the Metro and kind of sharing what's going on with the process and letting people know that it is still their job and their right to apply.
Thank you for having me.
For more information about FAFSA application, head to studentaid.gov/FAFSA tips to learn more.
This is the Metro on 1019 WDET, and coming up, we'll discuss a charity basketball game happening between Hamtramck and Dearborn. This is the Metro on 1019 WDET. I am Nick Austin alongside Tia Graham. And coming up, we'll discuss a charity basketball game between Hamtramck and Dearborn. But first, in the news, investigators are sharing more information on the massive fire that took place Monday night in Clinton Township. Officials say butane and nitrous canisters and vape pens were ignited and turned into projectiles. These canisters were launched up to 2 miles away. One of these canisters struck and killed a 19-year-old man. Officials say owners of the warehouse did not have a permit to store materials found at the fire. The fire department is working with federal agents to determine the fire's cause.
That's a tough one, Nick. However, switching topics here, some places around the world face dire humanitarian crises. Many people know about what's happening in Palestine. Their Israeli bombardments have created about 30,000 deaths, and where about 500,000 people now face extreme hunger. Less Americans know of what's going on in Yemen. 8 years of war in that country has devastated residents, leaving 13% of its 30 million people at risk of increased hunger since 2014. Some Michiganders are trying to help ease the burdens of Yemeni and Palestinian people. The third annual Hamtramck versus Dearborn charity basketball game is happening this Friday in Hamtramck to raise money for Yemenis and Palestinians. To talk more about the game, we have the organizer of the event here, Omar Thabit. Welcome to the Metro.
Thank you for having me, Tia. I appreciate you. And thank you, Nick, as well.
Awesome. So this charity event is the third annual Hamtramck versus Dearborn basketball game. How did this event get started?
Like you mentioned before, I appreciate you for bringing out those statistics because those matter. Those numbers matter. Those numbers are what got us to making this charity basketball game. You know, the first year, all the funds went to Yemen because of the humanitarian crisis, which has been going on for years now. It's the largest one in the world. But as years gone on, there's been other countries that have been affected. So we've decided, last year we added Turkey and Syria. A huge earthquake had happened right before the charity game, so we included them. And this year, everything that's been going on in Palestine, so we figured that we would include that country as well. So that's why the funds this year will be going to Yemen, Palestine, and we figured we can shed light by bringing two cities together, raising money, and also raising awareness.
So, what happens to the winner of the game, of course, and do they get any prizes or just pride?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of pride involved. So what we like to do is we like to get the mayors involved. I like to promote it. I bring the mayors, in videos, quick little clips to get people, thinking about the game. And so they are great sports. Shout out to Mayor Abdullah Hamoud and Mayor Emil Ghalib. They are both, willing, and even the council members, like we did a video with the council members as well, and they all know that it's for a great cause, so they're open to, being a part of it. But what the teams get, they definitely get a trophy. An MVP gets the MVP award, but really it's just all pride. It's all pride, and you get to say like, "Hey, we're the city that owns rights to this title for at least till the next year." So, and the series right now is 1-1. So Hamtramck won the first year, Dearborn won the second year. Both teams have won at their home court, so it's back in Hamtramck. So we're gonna see how that works.
It's going down this year.
Oh,
We're
yeah,
gonna break the tie.
It's about breaking the tie and kind of just again holding the crown up until next year.
I want to know now. I need to know the results of this. So, of course, we know it's Hamtramck versus Dearborn. Why these two cities in particular?
So these two cities have a large majority of an Arab population. A lot of them are Yemenis or Palestinians, but we do have other people represented as well. You got the Lebanese people, you got the Iraqi, the Saudi people. So a bunch of different backgrounds are in these cities, and Hamtramck, it's a Muslim majority city, and as well as Dearborn. So it's one of those things where it just makes sense. A lot of the stuff that's been going on with the news and the world has been targeted towards Dearborn and Hamtramck. I'm sure you guys have heard about those stories about, the uncommitted vote recently that, we decided to choose to go the route that we decided to take with a lot of the elected officials pushing for that to happen so that we can send a message to President Biden to demand a ceasefire right now in Palestine and in Gaza. So all this just makes sense. And again, with the city mayors also being Muslim majority, I think that's awesome as well. So, just kind of all, made sense. And both cities being so close together, it's like they call each other sister cities. Yeah. So, and there's been a little rivalry growing up between the two cities with everything that I just mentioned. You can imagine that, Hamtramck wants to be better than Dearborn. Dearborn wants to be better than Hamtramck. But over the years, especially with the elected officials being who they are, I feel like both cities have gotten together and figured out hey, there's a bigger picture out there and we need to focus on that.
And Omar, speaking of the elected officials, one of the questions or something that I always go back to, especially when I think about the Dearborn mayor and Hamtramck city officials, I think about the way they're immersing themselves within the community in a way that there's no barrier, there's no gaps there. They're right there accessible to the community and its members. What has that been like, especially putting together the charity event?
I mean, honestly, I would say that they are a huge part of the event. A lot of people there's a lot of pieces that help the event, but one of the biggest pieces is when I mention to people hey, we got both mayors involved. They do the ceremonial opening tip-off. That's important. So Mayor Abdullah Hamoud actually has been playing the last 2 years as well, but he has had an injury, so he will be out this year. But he will be there in attendance to do the tip-off and everything else. So that's huge. When you can say you got the leaders of the city involved in the game, that sends a message. Two ways. One, it sends a message to the audience that, hey, they're going to be a part of the event. Come check them out. Come see them in a different light because you may see them always serious in interviews, answering questions. But the second thing is they're showing their true leadership. They're showing that they're all about the community. Both mayors are, involved in their community. They are in there. They're hands-on. They're not just behind a desk sending out emails or doing interviews. They're actually hands-on, showing up to these events. It's not just this one. They show up to a bunch of community events. So, and I appreciate them for that. Shows sends a big message. I do want to include that they're not the only ones involved in the game. Oh, okay. Okay.
I was going to say, I did see a little note about Rashida Tlaib going to be there. She's going to be representing. So, when you talk about the other people that are going to be present at the game, what kind of turnout are you expecting this year?
Honestly, it should be fun. I really don't know how the turnout is going to be. You got to just hope for the best, and expect the worst, but hope for the best. But, we have, author and law professor and influencer Khalid Beydoun. This guy has over 2 million followers. He's been a huge advocate of some of the Middle East issues, specifically what's been going on in Palestine lately. We have Kani Humayed. She's a influencer in Baker. She has over 500K. Rashida Tlaib, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. It's funny. Her brother is one of the players that are in the game for Team Dearborn. So he FaceTimed me this morning, and of course, he puts me doesn't even warn me. It's Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib and a few other people on this FaceTime call, and she did a quick joke because she's going to be part of the halftime show, Rashida Tlaib, and she was like, this is not a halftime show. This is a comedy show at halftime. Because, she was talking about her skills and stuff. So, expect the comedy show, I guess, at halftime too. But yeah, so she'll be there. Kani Humayed. We have this, Ahmed Maudi. He's like a huge influencer, especially on TikTok. He'll be one of the MCs. We got Hill Harper. I forgot to mention Hill Harper. He got game, and also U.S. Senate candidate. Hill Harper will be there representing Team Dearborn, and then a bunch of local celebrities as well playing in the game as well. So, Elijah Warren, Mo Abdurrabba. So looking forward to it. Honestly, we're shooting for the moon. We're expecting a lot of vendors going to be sponsoring as well. So we appreciate them and their support, all the sponsors of the game.
And my last question before I let you go, what kind of organizations does the money get donated to in Palestine and Yemen? And what are some of the things that you want the people to know in terms of your support through this charity game?
Yeah, so the organizations that are going to be going to is UHF, United Humanitarian Foundation, and Give to Gain. Those are the Yemen organizations. I am still working with the Palestinian people to figure out the Palestinian organization.
Not easy.
It's not easy, and I have to make sure I check in with a lot of them and do my own research to make sure that the money is going to actually go there. So we do have a couple of them in mind. I don't want, it's not official yet, but I do have a couple people who are Palestinian that have told me that these are some trusted organizations. I'm just going to do my research to make sure. But the UHF and Give to Gain for the Yemen part, those both organizations are building homes in Yemen. They're funding orphans because there's a lot of orphans now in both countries. So just they focus on work that are, helping the Yemeni people. And we're going to make sure that the Palestinian people get the same, like I said, it's 50-50 split. And we're just going to make sure that it gets to them with the right organization for the Palestinian people.
Omar Thabit, you organized this year's third annual Hamtramck versus Dearborn event. You're also the host of the Motivate Me 313 podcast. Really, really love what you're doing in the community. Thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
Thank you so much, Tia. Thank you so much for including me, and we appreciate WDET Detroit for all their work.
Thank you.
It is the Metro on 1019 WDET, and coming up, a new sports dome is being created at Detroit's Chandler Park.
Welcome back to the Metro right here on 1019 WDET FM. I am Tia Graham. I am here always, every single day, with Nick Austin. And Nick, just taking a quick look at the weather, you might want to layer up once again. It's going to be a little gusty today, winds up to 21 miles per hour. Expect a high around 48 degrees. Tomorrow, we will see the sun again. It's going to be around 50 degrees. And Friday, do expect cloudy conditions, a chance of rain in the afternoon, a high around 57 degrees.
Layer up with those temperatures? I'm from Detroit.
You see me with the Snuggie right now.
Easy. I do see that right now. But if you're concerned about rain and especially getting your sport on, the way you got to do it is inside of a dome. That way the elements don't touch you. And Detroit is developing a new sports dome right now in Chandler Park. The park is in Councilwoman Letitia Johnson's district, and she spoke with WDET's Hearns Laguerre Jr. about the possible benefits of the sports dome, potentially keeping rain off you, and the need for affordable housing in the area.
The $14 million sports dome at Chandler Park. What will the space provide for your residents in your district?
So the recreational center is vital for our district. It will be the first that comes online in the district in over 15 years. And so I wanted to ensure that it was a space for everyone, and not just a recreational center where young people can play sports, but to also have the opportunity for our seniors, our middle-age residents to be able to utilize the facilities and just see a variety of our residents hanging out, whether playing cards or playing sports. So that was extremely important to me.
In regards to some of your other development projects, I know you stressed the importance of development of affordable housing. Could you describe the current landscape of housing, specifically in your district, and what is being done to better housing in District 4?
So currently, I would say we have more homeowners than we have renters. A decade ago, it was more renters than homeowners, and now it seems to be that we're moving back to more homeowners because rental rates are so high. In the district, one of the things that I have really focused on is bringing in developers that have the ability to build affordable housing. So there is one particular developer that I'm working with for them to build 100 two-unit townhouses that will be affordable. So they're affordable because they'll be able to rent out one of the units and utilize that income producing unit to help bring down their mortgage, taxes, and insurance costs. One of the other things that just recently happened that I'm ecstatic about, the support of a community land trust. And it'll be the first that where the city is actually providing support for a community land trust. And so I am looking to do some things during budget season that kicks off on Thursday that just helps to solidify that support. The community land trust allows the community to decide, how much the housing prices are going to be. So it doesn't necessarily follow the traditional market.
Are there any incentives for developers or are you guys even looking into zoning, maybe changing zoning laws or whatever in order to help developers or maybe expedite their process in creating affordable housing?
Zone Detroit is an initiative that's been going on for a number of years. I believe the City Planning Commission is about to revisit it just to make sure that zoning is proper and appropriate for any particular area. I can tell you that in the district, we are planning to host a developer summit where we bring together the entities that provide the incentives along with the City Planning Commission and the Planning and Development Department, as well as the Detroit Land Bank Authority and the Detroit Building Authority with developers to say, okay, this is how this area is zoned. These are incentives that you can apply for. I actually want for my team and I to go out within the community looking at the larger swaths of land and talking to community about what they'd like to see within this area. And then having all of that shape and inform what developers decide to do. But I really want to remove any red tape that may be there that encourages developers to develop in the district. And I will note that District 4 is still the district with the most amount of vacant land than any in the city.
Letitia Johnson is the City Council member for District 4. She spoke with WDET's Hearns Laguerre Jr. This is The Metro.
That's right, Nick. This is the Metro, and we're cruising into noon so we can cruise into the groove with its host, Ryan Patrick Cooper.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
Show sounds fantastic. Tough act to follow, but I'm going to try my hardest. I've got 3 hours of music, a lot of it new, some of it reissues from an Afrobeat legend, Fela Kuti. Some stuff coming out of the archives that was actually curated by Fela's son and Chris Martin of Coldplay for some reason. So we'll talk about that on the show today. We're also going to mix in some punk rock covers. Okay, so this is like The Raincoats with Gina Birch, who put out a great record on Third Man Records last year, covering Lola by The Kinks. Or The Slits covering Heard It Through the Grapevine by Marvin Gaye. It's all going to make sense. All you need to do is tune in the groove with me, Ryan Patrick Cooper, coming up here next on WDET.
Indeed, you are. And that's the Metro. For Wednesday, March 6th, you can listen to recent episodes online at WDET.org and make sure to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
The show is produced by Sam Corey, David Lyons, and Jack Philbrandt. Our technical director is Nate Bender. Music by Sam Bobian, and our news director is Jerome Vaughn. Our program director is Adam Fox.
The Metro is a WDET production. It's a listener-supported service of Wayne State University. If you like what you hear and want to support the Metro, consider becoming a member at wdet.org/donate.
This is 1019 WDET FM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and conversation. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening.
WDET is supported by the College of Business Administration at University of Detroit Mercy. UDM is offering a new master's degree in ethical leadership focused on sustainable, ethical, and inclusive problem solving. More information at business.udmercy.edu.